Sometimes life brings two people together at the exact moment they need someone the most. Not with fireworks, not with drama. Just quiet kindness, a small choice that ends up changing everything. And this story begins with a girl who had almost given up on people, and a guy who wasn't planning to be a hero, but became one anyway. It starts on a cold evening in a small town where the neon lights of a closing diner still flickered long after most people went home. Inside stood a girl wiping down the same counter for the third time, half for work, half to distract her thoughts. And then a stranger walked in, tired, hungry, and carrying the kind of silence that comes from long days and heavy responsibilities. But neither of them knew that night would become the turning point of their lives. Before we begin, if you enjoy heartfelt, emotional, and inspiring real lifestyle stories, make sure you hit subscribe, like, and leave a comment for us here at The Soulful Stories. Your support helps us bring you more stories that touch the heart and remind us of the good in the world. Her name was Emily, and she had worked at the diner for 2 years. It wasn't the job she dreamed of, but it was the job she needed. Things at home were complicated, money was tight, and most days she felt invisible, like she was just another person trying to stay afloat. She was the kind of girl who took care of everyone but herself, the one who stayed late to cover shifts, the one who listened to customers' problems even when no one asked how she was doing. She laughed easily, but the sadness behind it was visible to anyone who looked closely. But not many people looked closely. The man who walked in that night did. His name was Lucas, a construction worker who had just finished a 14-hour shift. His clothes were dusty, his hands rough, and exhaustion pulled at his shoulders. But his eyes, quiet, steady, observant, held something familiar. The look of someone carrying more than he. Admitted. "Sorry, we're about to close," Emily said gently. Lucas nodded. "I just need something warm. Anything's fine." She hesitated, then smiled. "Sit anywhere. I'll make it work." He chose a corner booth, the one near the window where the streetlights cast long reflections on the glass. And as Emily prepared a bowl of soup and a grilled cheese, she kept glancing his way. There was something about him that made her feel safe, even without speaking. When she brought the food over, he looked up, offered a tired smile, and said, "Thank you." Really. Most customers rushed, most didn't care. But he said it with sincerity, as if he understood how much kindness meant, even in small forms. She sat across from him to finish rolling silverware, partly because it was her job, partly because she felt drawn to him. "You look like you've been working non-stop," she said. He chuckled. "Yeah. Double shifts all week, gotta pay off a few things." "Same," she whispered, not meaning to say it out loud. He looked at her then, not at her uniform, not at her tired eyes, but at her as if seeing a whole story behind them. "Rough day?" he asked. She shrugged. "Rough month." That made him smile in a soft, understanding way. It wasn't pity, it was connection. They talked for a few minutes. Nothing deep at first. Just jokes about tired feet, customers with strange requests, how the diner coffee tasted like burnt hope after midnight. But slowly the conversation shifted. She told him about working extra hours because her mother's medical bills were piling up, how she dreamed of nursing school but couldn't save enough to enroll, how she felt like life kept running ahead while she stayed stuck. He told her about taking care of his younger brother after their parents passed. How he worked long days so his brother could stay in school, how he promised himself he wouldn't let his family fall apart. They both laughed at how life never seemed to give breaks to the people who needed them most. At some point, as they were joking about her lopsided grilled cheese skills, she said something she didn't expect to say. "Careful," she told him softly, almost playfully. "I get attached to hard-working guys fast." She meant it as a joke, a random sentence that slipped out. But Lucas didn't laugh it off. He looked at her, really looked at her, the way no one had in a long time. Then he said without hesitation, "Then I'll stay tonight." The words made her freeze. She didn't know if he meant he'd stay until she finished cleaning, stay to keep her company, or stay in her life in some deeper way. All she knew was her heart felt something warm, like someone had finally stepped into the space she'd been trying to fill alone. "You don't have to," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But you shouldn't have to end your day alone." So he stayed. He stayed while she swept the floors, while she restocked the napkins, while she locked the doors. He walked her to her old car, making sure she wasn't alone in the dark parking lot. And when she turned to say goodbye, he didn't rush, didn't ask for anything, didn't cross boundaries. He just said, "Text me when you get home, so I know you're safe." Her chest tightened. No one had asked her that in years. When she got home and messaged him, he replied instantly, "Thank you for letting me stay." And from that night on, something changed. Lucas began visiting the diner after his shifts, always sitting in the same booth, always asking how her day was before she even asked about his. Sometimes he'd bring her small things, a favorite candy bar, a new pen, a cup of real coffee from across town. She didn't say it aloud, but these tiny gestures made her feel seen, valued, appreciated in a way she forgot existed. And she did things for him too. She packed his lunch when he had long shifts. She wrote him encouraging notes inside napkins. She listened when he felt overwhelmed. They weren't dating, not officially. They were simply two people choosing each. Other through quiet kindness, day after day. One evening, Emily received a phone call during her shift. Bad news. Her mom's condition had worsened. She tried to hide the tears, tried to keep working, but her hands shook. Lucas saw it from across the diner. He stood up immediately, walked toward her and asked softly, "What happened?" She broke down. Right there, in the middle of the empty diner, she cried into his chest, apologizing over and over. He wrapped his arms around her and held her like she was the most important thing in his world. "Hey," he murmured. "You don't ever have to apologize for needing someone," she whispered. "I'm so tired of carrying everything alone." He shook his head. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore." From that day forward, he helped her with hospital rides, stayed with her through long nights, and made her laugh when her world felt too heavy. And she helped him too. She encouraged him to take breaks, to treat himself, to pursue the promotion he always avoided because he didn't think he deserved more. They grew. Not because they were perfect people, but because they showed up with kindness when it mattered. Months passed, and the diner became their little world. A world built on encouragement, late-night talks, and the kind of honesty that makes two people feel safe enough to hope again. One night, after a particularly hard week, Emily sat across from Lucas in the same booth they first met. She looked at him, the man who stayed when he didn't have to, who cared without conditions, and felt something deep settle in her heart. "Remember the first night we talked?" she asked. He smiled. "When you warned me you get attached." She nodded. "Yeah." "Well," he said, leaning closer, "I'm glad you did." She laughed softly. "And you stayed." "I'll always stay," he whispered. Not as a promise made lightly, but as a truth he chose every day. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. Life still threw challenges at them. Bills still came. Work was still exhausting. But now, neither of them walked through it alone. They learned that kindness isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's a warm meal after a long day. A text asking if you made it home safe. Showing up when someone feels invisible. Staying when it's easier to leave. Kindness is love in its early form. Small, steady, and powerful enough to change a life. Emily and Lucas didn't save the world, but they saved each other, and sometimes that's enough. Kindness has a way of reaching into the quiet places of our lives and reminding us that we matter. When we choose to stay, to care, to show up even in small ways, we become the reason someone believes in goodness again. So today, no matter where you are or what you're going through, choose kindness. You never know whose life you might touch, maybe even your own.